Okay, this is the Quality Hour with Super Rat. Today I'm going to be going over how to do a cold rolled round stock to make things. I'd like to maybe do a little bit of an introduction on what kind of stuff I do. I believe God put us on this earth to create. If you look at all the ancient texts and what have you, in history we were always building, making things. The bigger and more complicated, the better. That can be your religion if you want. My medium is to build things out of something that has a motor, motorcycles. That's all I do. Do a little bit of cars. I'm not really into them though. There's always more. I always set up roadblocks for myself, if you will. The number one thing being not having any money. It's a kind of self-inflicted problem, because if you are addicted to things, you end up just wanting more and more and more of them. If that's drugs, alcohol, money, gambling, any vices really. It's just part of the human condition if you're a addictive personality. So a typical day in my life is if I build a motorcycle, you need X amount of dollars to build it the way you want to build it. And then you you try and sock away money for the build. Well, in the meantime, you end up stumbling across another motorcycle. So the addictive side of your personality is like, oh, well, I'll just take the money I socked away for the build and buy this next motorcycle. The cycle goes on and on and on, which is fine. That's how you end up with a lot of motorcycles. And every time you sell a motorcycle, you're one motorcycle closer to not having a motorcycle. That's the general rule of thumb with motorcycle collectors. So the solution to that problem is to try and build everything yourself using raw materials and a welder, a grinder. You don't need a lot of fancy tools. You just need ingenuity. So what I like to do is get a motorcycle for as cheap as I possibly can, and as you are traveling through the motorcycle collectors world, or not necessarily collectors, but just motorcycle fanatics, you meet people, you have all these friends, and a friend of a friend have a friend or whatever has a motorcycle that's stuffed in the back of their shop and has been there for 30 years and it doesn't run and it's, all cruddy looking. So then you end up with a motorcycle that you want for a low dollar amount. I prefer British, European, and American motorcycles. It's hard for me to get excited about, a mid-80s Japanese motorcycle that, is worth $200, because you'll put all this work into it, and when it's all done, it'll probably be worth about $200. With Harley Davidsons, Triumphs, Ducatis, BMWs, and the Japanese market may come up. I like the 60s era Japanese stuff, and I have a lot of that stuff, but it's going to be a while before the market comes up on a lot of the stuff from the 80s and what have you. But that doesn't mean you can't ride or you don't have to be into what I'm into, is what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. So the point of all this is that when you don't have any money, you have to be creative. And there's negative sides to all that. I mean, yeah, it's great. You can be creative. You take an old couch and you repurpose it for your seat. Well, that can go a lot of different ways. I mean, yes, I have used an old couch to make a seat before, but it was a leather couch, and when it's all done, you wouldn't even know it. So what I'd like to do is, I'm not in this for money or views, per se. I mean, it's if you're into motorcycles and you're into creating, maybe I can help you out and teach you some ways to do things on a low budget that are, stunning when they're all done. One negative thing about me is that I don't mind if something's really gnarly when it's done, as long as it was done well. It doesn't have to be chromed, polished, plated, painted. That's all fine. But if you do a good job fabbing and then you leave it unpainted and it gets rusty or whatever, the craftsmanship can still shine through. I'm self-taught. I'm not smart. I'm not schooled. I barely made it through high school, but common sense goes a long way. And you don't need to have $10,000 worth of tools. For a few $100s in tools, you can build almost anything. Takes a little longer. You got to have a little patience. But here's this is a license plate, bracket, and taillight that I'm building for this bike here. And so I'll do a short series on this. This is running long. I'm at 7 minutes already. So maybe this will just be the intro. Okay.